March 1922. The Bavarian winter was refusing to break. Imagine a place so isolated that the nearest neighbor is a silhouette on the horizon, and the only sound is the rhythmic thud of an axe against wood. This was Hinterkaifeck, a small hexagonal farmstead 50 miles north of Munich. It was home to the Grubers, Andreas, his wife Chilia, their widowed daughter Victoria, and her two children, 7-year-old Chilia and 2-year-old Joseph. They were a family wrapped in whispers, rumors of incest, hidden gold, and a patriarch with a temper as cold as the frost on his fields. But in the spring of 1922, the whispers turned into a scream that no one heard. It started with the tracks, a single set of boot prints leading from the dense, dark forest directly to the farmhouse wall. Andreas Gruber followed them, his heart hammering against his ribs, expecting to find a thief. But when he reached the end of the trail, the tracks simply stopped. There were no returning prints. No one had walked back into the woods. Someone was on the farm, and they weren't planning on leaving. This is the deep dive investigation of the cold map. The terror of Hinterkaifeck didn't arrive with a burst door. It was a slow, agonizing crawl. 6 months before the tragedy, the family's maid had fled the farm in a state of near madness. She claimed the house was alive. She spoke of rhythmic, heavy footsteps in the attic rafters, footsteps that followed her from room to room. She was convinced the farm was haunted. The Grubers replaced her, but the ghost remained. In the final days of March, the evidence became impossible to ignore. Andreas found a newspaper on his porch, the Munich latest news. He didn't subscribe to it. No one in the village had seen the mailman deliver it. It was as if it had been placed there by someone who wanted him to know they were watching the same world he was. Then, the keys went missing. The master set for the entire house vanished. Andreas searched every inch of the barn, the machine shed, and the cellar. Nothing. The night before the murders, Andreas told a neighbor he heard scratching inside the walls. He found a set of strange scuff marks on the lock of the tool shed. He knew someone was inside his perimeter. He knew the ghost was real, but for reasons we will never understand. He never pulled the trigger on his shotgun. He never called for help. He simply went to bed and waited for the shadow to move. Friday, March 31st, a night of absolute, suffocating darkness. One by one, the family was lured into the barn. We don't know the bait. Perhaps a horse was let loose. Perhaps a lantern was lit in the hayloft. The grandmother went first, then Andreas, then the daughter, Victoria. Finally, the 7-year-old child. They weren't shot. They weren't stabbed. They were executed with a ryutho, a heavy, cross-shaped mechanical pickaxe. Forensic reports later revealed something truly haunting. The young girl, Chilia, survived the initial blow. As she lay in the straw next to her family, she had pulled out tufts of her own hair in a state of shock and agony. She lived for hours, in the dark, waiting for a grandfather who would never stand up. The killer then walked calmly into the house. He found the new maid, Maria, who had arrived only hours earlier, and the toddler, Joseph, sleeping in his cot. He showed no mercy. The lineage of the Grubers was erased in a single night. But here is where the mystery defies human logic. Most killers flee. They run from the blood and the quiet. But the guest of Hinterkaifeck, he stayed. For the next 4 days, the farm continued to breathe. Neighbors saw smoke billowing from the chimney. They saw a light moving in the kitchen. On Sunday, the neighbors noticed the family was absent from church, but they saw someone walking in the yard. The cows were fed. The goats were milked. The killers sat at the Gruber's table and ate their meat, drank their milk, and slept in their beds. He lived a domestic life with 6 corpses rotting just 30 feet away in the barn. When the search party finally arrived on Tuesday, they found the house warm. The fire in the hearth was still glowing. The killer had escaped just minutes, perhaps an hour, before the door was kicked in. He had lived as a Gruber until the very last second. Who was he? The police questioned over 100 people, but 3 names still haunt the file. Suspect 1, Lorenz Schlittenbauer, the neighbor. He had a brief, scandalous relationship with Victoria and was the one who discovered the bodies. He moved the corpses before the police arrived, claiming he was looking for survivors. Was he a hero, or was he cleaning his own crime scene? Suspect 2, Carl Gabriel, Victoria's husband. He was reported killed in the trenches of World War I in 1914, but his body was never recovered. Did he survive the war, return home in a fit of jealous rage, and reclaim his farm with a pickaxe? Suspect 3. The nameless drifter, a shadow with no face. Someone who lived in the attic for months, fueled by a silent, boiling hatred for a family they didn't even know. The farm was demolished in 1923 beneath the floorboards of the kitchen. They found the hidden murder weapon, the iron pickaxe. It had been there the whole time, tucked away like a dark secret. I'm your host for the Cold Map. The case of Hinterkaifeck reminds us that the most dangerous person isn't the one waiting in the woods. It's the one already inside your house. Subscribe to keep the map glowing. And tonight, double check the locks on your attic, because some guests never intend to leave.